Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to get out after a year of lockdown and not seeing people. Um, this is, I don't know, the seventh or eighth time I'm conducting an interview here. But in the past, it's been only politicians. There was Yashwant Sinha. Some of you came and we've met before. There was, of course, Jay Panda. But for the first time, I'm interviewing someone of a very different profile here. So it'll be interesting to get the questions later, which we'll open out to the audience. So Swara, let me start off with, we've spoken before, we've done interviews before, so I'll try not to repeat the same thing. I've asked you much of that. We will touch on your activism and the price you pay, because that is an important part of what you do. But I'd also like to kind of try to get into other aspects of your likes and dislikes that may not have been discussed, since your activism eclipses everything else. So why do you do it?
Well, hello, everyone, first of all. And I don't think I've been in such a fancy room in a long time. And there's something intimidating about sitting here with a mic while everyone's getting a drink. Thank you, Saloni ma'am, and everyone at the Quorum team for having me here. I'm also getting out. This is my first event after the pandemic, so I'm very excited. And that's why I wanted a stylist and makeup and all, because I was like, this is an opportunity I'm not going to let go of. In response to why do I do it? What do I do? I mean, my response really is that what do I or people like us, including yourself in some sense, do really that is so problematic? Why is there even so much attention on my Twitter page? What am I doing? I'm literally only saying what I feel about what is happening around me in my country. And I think that it's very telling that the act of just speaking your opinion in a somewhat, perhaps not very safely balanced manner, and the act of taking sides in terms of the conflicts that are happening around us, I think it's telling that that has become something that is unusual, something that is controversial, something that makes you bold. At one time, the only thing that made actresses bold was bathing scenes in bathtubs. I mean, I've never done a bathing scene in a bathtub in any film. I've not got into a bathtub. I have not had the opportunity to get into a bathtub in any film. But somehow I've just become bold for just, talking about things that I feel and maybe asking some questions. So I think that it really says a lot about where we're at. If opinion is going to become controversial, and down that road at its most extreme point, if opinion is going to become criminalized, which is really what is happening, which is also something that is happening. And I guess why I do it, the other reason is that I was not born in New India. I grew up in Old India, where it was okay to ask questions and where it was okay to criticize the government. And yeah.
It's, I get what you're saying, but the film industry was never one to really take a political stance. It is a new development in the sense that if you see videos of Dilip Kumar in the 70s, he's playing a RJ to Sanjay Gandhi coming, and in the most servile, pathetic way, Dilip Kumar is praising Sanjay Gandhi. Kishore Kumar was the only one who stood up, and his songs are banned from AIR. But is this not a new thing where, stars are taking a political stand? I can understand when they take a stand because it is of a commercial benefit. When you say, I do what I do, but I'm in the news business. It is part of my job. It is not part of your job. And I'm sure it is at great cost of endorsements. Like, let's say, yaar, ek aisa face lao jo non-controversial ho, jo beautiful ho, jo glamorous ho, lekin pachade mein na pade. So beautiful and glamorous and non-controversial, Swara is not the name that's going to come to mind. So clearly you're losing commercial, it's not causing me commercially. I mean, I can become an ad model and take Modi ads and Yogi ads and Kejriwal ads and, Chhattisgarh ads, which you see on all broadcast. But there's a business sense to that. This is not your job. So that's why I ask, what is the motivation? I mean, I'm just trying to get into, like when you wake up in the morning, chalo, aaj iski latedti hu main. Like,
Okay, I do not get up like that. I just want to say, I'm not like getting up in the morning going loco on Twitter. I'm a reasonably pleasant person. I brought my father to attest to that.
Motivation is, in other cases, like the point I was making was that Bollywood, wherever the commerce works, they will go. Like and some of these filmmakers are friends of mine. Some reporters are friends of mine. Some of them say, "Karna padta hai," because otherwise I have so many crores riding. I have such and such network riding. I have such and such broadcast riding on it. I don't believe it, but I got to do it. You don't got to do it. So, and your commerce, clearly there's a conflict. So, what motivates you?
Perhaps it's the context where I'm born and brought up, where I studied. Both my parents are scholars in their own ways. We were encouraged to sort of think about things, ask questions, have discussions on dinner. Thanks, Dad. Every day about like some topic that was, on the news, and everyone could go around the table and say what they felt like. And so part of it was that. Then the kind of education I had, I think I was very blessed to have teachers. I was a liberal arts student. I had teachers who always taught us to sort of, think in a sort of critical manner about what's happening around us. I went Miranda. I did my bachelor's at Miranda House, and one of my classmates is actually here, and she will remember. We had a very sort of progressive department, and we had teachers who sort of were very. They would constantly, sort of make us aware of the fact that there's nothing called neutral. Like that, neutral is actually a privilege, and it is also sort of a sign of a certain kind of power position that you occupy in society, to have the choice to be neutral, because there's so many people who don't have that choice to be neutral because of their name, because of their caste identity, because of whatever reason, gender identity, sexual orientation, whatever. So I think it was that training. And then when I began to do theatre, I started working with IPTA. JNU had a chapter, which is the Indian People's Theatre Association. So again, a lot of, sort of progressive, political kind of theatre. So I think I also got sort of socialized into a certain kind of culture of, asking questions, being involved. And ideologically, I came to believe that there is nothing called neutral, that you have to be involved. And as an artist, you have to be involved, because how can I play roles of people in the world, tell stories of regular people in the world without being involved in what might be actually happening to them? So it's odd to say that, oh, I'm playing Chanda in Nil Bate Sanata, who's a maid, and then not care about what is happening in slums, or, not care about the politics of slum rehabilitation, redevelopment, whatever it's called, that happens in all big cities around us. Not to say that I can do anything about it, not that I have any kind of a God complex, savior complex about it, but at least I should be interested. Because just for my work, in a selfish sort of way, I need to be interested. So I think part of it is that. The other part of it is, and I'm sorry to sound cheesy, and Valentine's Day is around the corner, and I'm kind of without a date, so I guess. Just at a very basic level, when I came to think of it, I was like, we hear so much talk of patriotism, and it's just like shoved down our throat, like Rashtravad and Desh Bhakti and patriotism. And I'm like, okay, what is that? That you love your country, right? Yeah, of course. So if you love something, don't you fight for it? Like, don't you put in a fight when it is going down the hellhole or into the gutters? Like, aren't you going to stand there and like say no, if nothing else? That's really just it. You put in a fight for what you love. And that's why I do it. And as far as like cost goes, there's a cost to every choice you make in your life. There would have been a cost to staying silent. And trust me, Abhinandan, there is. I don't want to sort of, tell a sob story for any big Bollywood stars. They're all grown-ups and, they're very rich and they can take care of themselves. But I can rest assure you that I'm sure many of them feel very uncomfortable with their choice, which is silence, but they choose to do it because I'm sure they have a permutation combination. I'm sure they have reasons for it. But, you have to live with whatever choice. And knowing the person I am, I was just like, I can't do it. I just can't do it. Like, it's a selfish thing. I know myself. Like, I am the same person that I was when I was in college. I am really basically the same person that I was when I was in JNU, and then I landed up in Bollywood. And
I just decided that, look, I learned to wear the heels, I learned to wear the makeup, I straightened my hair, I wore the designer clothes, and that's about it. Okay, like I can't act anymore. Like that's how much I could change, and I changed that, or I learned, or whatever the hell. And the rest of it is just, it's my choice. I will die if I, not die literally, but like I will die a little bit inside me every day if I'm forced to be silent. So I made that choice, and I knew there'd be a price to that I would have to pay, and I was like, okay, it's fine. Like it's because I chose it, I'll do it. You know, you when you make a choice out of your own free will, you're willing to pay, go along that path. And I will say, I don't want to sound like I'm the greatest person. I'm not alone in speaking up, and I'm not alone in like paying a price. I mean, even from within our industry, and I mean, just again, because perhaps we don't talk about this enough, Bollywood has of course, most of the example of Bollywood in politics is kissing ass of the government, which is fair, and there's a reason for that, which is also very understandable, because we're very vulnerable in the industry. You know, every film requires like a whole list of government clearances just to get released. Even after that, you can still get banned, you can still get into court, it's very vulnerable, it's only getting worse.
It's not your choice. A lot of people are going to get impacted.
A lot of people get impacted. Yeah, and the people who are putting the money are often not the faces, are never the faces. So they're sometimes having to pay for what we have done. So, you know, it's a very complex thing, and I feel that sometimes Bollywood ko thodi zyada gali pad jati hai because wo itne bhi bure nahi hai बेचारे, वो थोड़े मजबूर हैं. That's just the nature of you know, how films are made. But I mean, we've had examples like Majroo Sultanpuri, and I don't know how many of you know this, that Majroo Saab went to jail. I think it was in 1951 or 56, I can't remember. But he literally went to jail because he addressed a gathering of mill workers where he read a nazm criticizing then Prime Minister Nehru for his extra interest in the Commonwealth as opposed to the agrarian crisis. And the last line, it's so interesting that we're talking about this now, and the last line of that nazm is "Maar le saathi jaane na paaye." And he said this in that meeting. Balraj Sahni was on stage with him, one more person whose name I can't remember. And someone from the audience called the police, or maybe the police was already there. And the police came up and there was an altercation. He was asked to apologize. He refused to apologize. He was arrested and charged with sedition. And he was in jail for 11 months. And consistently at that time, he was constantly asked to apologize. He refused to apologize. And he spent that time in jail until the case came up in the Bombay High Court, and the judge was like, what the hell is this? There's no sedition. And this story, part of the story I read, part of it, Majroo Saab's son told me, how Raj Kapoor used to send to their house a monthly stipend because he was the only earning member of the family. They were little kids. So there are these examples in Bollywood as well, and we don't know about it. And he came out and he got work again. He's one of the most legendary lyricists of the, he was not punished for his opinion, which is something that perhaps we, can't, now, I don't know if we can come out of that and feel like we won't be punished. That's one. Shabana ji is another example. But around the world, I mean, look at Colin Kaepernick, there's so many people who, artists who take those.
The other institutions, and I must say, my world must take responsibility. The institution of the media, why it's called the fourth pillar of democracy, is because it keeps an information flow unafraid and fair. And when that kind of collapses, a lot of other things collapse, which is what's happening in our country. So here you don't have the institutional support that you do in the Western world. So how many endorsement deals do you have right now?
0.
So it does.
No, it definitely has an impact. I mean, I will say that, and I used to feel very ashamed about this, and I used to feel very scared that if people found out, if producers found out, I would be like, I would have a black mark against my name, and people would be like, oh, she's difficult, she's controversial, can't. And then, so for the longest time when people said, oh, does it affect your work? I'd be like, no, it doesn't, not at all. Oh, it's all chill. And then after a point, I was like, why am I acting like it freaking doesn't? It totally does. And it's not my fault. Like, why should I feel ashamed for something that is not my fault? So yeah, of course it does. I mean, I remember very vividly two instances. One, after I campaigned for Kanhaiya, and we were in talks for like at least 3 endorsement things where you, sort of paid associations with brands, and all of them two at like where prices were locked and contracts were in discussion were like, oh, I'm so sorry, we need a non-political person. And I was like, thanks, Kanhaiya. So that went south very quickly. I remember when I'd once tweeted for Amazon, some kind of again, paid collaboration. And it was right around when a whole bunch of us had done this sort of placard campaign for the Kathua gang rape. And there was this whole boycott trend on Amazon, and Amazon pulled the tweet down, which was seen as a great victory by the right-wing ecosystem on social media. That was another time. And then the third time, of course, was more recently, and this actually, I have a written proof of this because I have a termination letter. I was endorsing a skincare brand. And I have a termination letter that actually says that due to your participation in the CA-NRC protests, you have brought disrepute to our brand and affected our sales, and we have to terminate this clause.
What brand was this?
I'm not going to tell you the name and get into more trouble. Abhinandan, apna 100 crore ka defamation case hai, mere pe bhi le aao. Thanks, bro. Good job. But it was all right. I didn't mind it so much because like it was a really bad brand, guys. I'm sorry. Very bad products. But yeah, so it does have an effect. But now we're in a place where, and I don't mean to be horrible, but there was some years when, oh my God, Swara Bhaskar was trouble. But now I'm like, hey, everyone is basically trouble, because like we've reached a place now when, Alia Bhatt is a problem because she's a star child, because, whatever, Navika has this bizarre interest in people's WhatsApp chats and like cooking up whatever, crazy like mythological stories about people's involvement in other people's deaths and whatever the hell. So now basically everything is a problem. Everyone, I mean, do you know, I didn't know this, I've just found out today that in Tandav, in the cases, in the 6-7 FIRs that have been filed against Tandav, one of them has been filed against Dimple Kapadia, ma'am. And I was like, oh. Oh.
Okay. Okay, you get the connection, right?
The son-in-law didn't help. So if Dimple Kapadia, ma'am, has an FIR against her,
Well,
it's just a question of आप कतार में हैं और आप कतार में कितने पीछे हैं.
Also, there seems to be this mythology, misconception that silence will be rewarded. It won't. It's like that bully who first wants you to kneel, then wants you to beg, then wants to kick you. I watched on one of the most servile channels, which has a case against News Laundry, The Times Now, Sanju Verma telling the anchor to shut up. And he's saying, you can't tell me to shut up. He's saying something really lame. And then he goes on to say, but I agree with Mr. Modi's farm law. So he's doing this balancing act कि भाई अपनी बची खुची चीथड़े इज्जत की चीथड़े भी बचाएं, but at the same time say something nice about Modi. Similarly, on Aaj Tak, I've seen Sambit Patra insult the anchor. So for those who think that silence will make sure that you treat your dignity, they're idiots. They haven't read history. So I'm with you on that. But enough about activism. Let's come about the fun part, Bollywood. You've been a part of the film industry for 11 years now. I've also worked a little bit in film. I was the cable wrangler in Monsoon Wedding. I was the camera assistant, and I was an AD for Filhal. Now, I spent a year in Bombay, which I couldn't hack, by the way. I was like, dude, when can I get back to Delhi? Back then Devdas was being made. And when Devdas was being made, there were 5-6 films being made. We used to shoot in Mehboob Studios. And I'm giving you this instance because this was my realization into Bollywood. And during the Devdas shooting, a fan had fallen on Sanjay Leela Bhansali's set and had killed one of the light boys or spot boys. You must have been very young at the time. This is 2000, I think.
I mean, I definitely pretend to be younger than I was. So
yeah, no, but yeah, you were clearly. So, and at Mehboob Studio, there were like 4-5 floors and everyone would have lunch together. And everyone, oh, this happened on the, at this one set. And there's a sense of thrill and glee with everybody. And that time, this new place called Olive had just opened, just as you go down Pali Hill in Bandra. So everybody after shoot used to go to Olive. And when hum bhi pahunch gaye ji. So there was much thrill about Sanjay Leela Bhansali's film getting into shit because of this death. And Shah Rukh walked in. And all the people who were standing there bitching Shah Rukh out and bitching Sanjay Leela Bhansali out were all in line, hi Shah Rukh, we were just talking about you. So I was like, dude, really? Is this it? And in my 1 year, I realized no one is anyone's friend. Now, can you confirm or deny that?
I think that it's not entirely true that there are no friendships, of course. I mean, like, I feel like there's, of course, showbiz and the glamour world is sort of, I think everywhere in the world, the showbiz has a certain quality of sometimes being a little too much off the moment. Let's put it like that. I think that our whole business is geared toward that moment, and this whole idea that the show must go on. So there is this sense that that the thing out there that you're doing, which is a dream for you, a dream for so many other people, is larger than you in some sense. And it affects all of us and all our relationships in very weird ways. It's not, but I do feel like, थोड़ा ज़्यादा भी होता है ना कि ओ ऐसी जगह है जहाँ सिर्फ सेक्स हो रहा है, सिर्फ ड्रग्स हो रहा है, कोई काम ही नहीं हो रहा, सब बिचिंग चल रही है ऐसे, but hello, when will we shoot if we're only having sex and doing drugs? And so it's not that bad. There are good friendships in Bollywood as well. Shah Rukh has been a good friend to many people and has some very good friends who I'm sure have stood by him. I have been very lucky with some really good people that I've worked with, good friends. But yeah,
is it the nature of the business?
The nature of the business
because
is...
when you're shooting for six months, from 4 a.m. to midnight,
you're
you
with
just
that
see
group.
those groups.
Yeah,
so,
I think,
and then after 6 months, you may not see those people. So
it's exactly
emotionally
that. It's just very fleeting, our industry, and it's very fleeting and it's very off the moment. So it's like what you're saying. When I'm on a film shoot, my whole life is that shoot. My whole day, I'm on set at 7 a.m. and I'm leaving at 8 p.m. I'm going back and I'm whatever. I don't read a paper. I don't know the news. I don't know. So everything is about that. So you form these friendships that are very intense for short durations. And then everyone goes back to their real lives. And you
don't meet those people.
You meet them again when you work together, but you may not keep in touch necessarily as much. But I don't know, my way of, I've learned to balance that by just, kind of learning to compartmentalize the work friendships. So I think it's okay to make intense friendships that you don't necessarily keep in touch with, but the next time you meet them, you've had that experience of warmth and affection, and you can kind of pick it up wherever. But you also have to learn to, and I think that's what, as an actor, for me, I've learned to preserve and hold on to that, my real life. The life that is not on set, which is my family, my home, my friends who are not part of the film world, who were my friends before. And I find, actually, because you said it, I find that I'm always coming back to Delhi. Because for me, those are my roots. That's really, and I feel like that's what kind of keeps me sane. So yeah, that's the kind of balance I've worked out. But it's a crazy place.
Since you were at JNU, right? And you did theatre there. I've spoken to some people who have told me about your theatre in JNU. From the kind of theatre that you did, and I think Mandi House was pretty much dead by the time you were in college. It was like this happening hub when Manoj and Ashish and all were here. But I think by the late 90s, it had kind of died. But still, that kind of theatre survived in JNU. What was the transition like from being a Kayal, if you like, of the craft or of the mission to something that is a project? A film is a project. And like you said, we sometimes give Bollywood a very hard time. But when you have 500 people's money riding on it, it's not your decision alone. Yeah. Just like a leader of a country, whether you see films like Lincoln, not all the decisions were ethical, but when you're not taking it just for yourself, your choices are different. So from the kind of theatre or craft, which was all about the mission, transitioning to a project-oriented craft, what was the motivation, and what was the experience like? Did you feel that this is not what I'm used to?
The motivation, and any actor who doesn't admit to this is lying. A big part of the motivation is vanity. It's the glamour and the thrill of seeing yourself on 70 mm. That's really what it is. Everyone who goes to Bombay to be an actor is actually going to Bombay to be a star. You're going to be Amitabh Bachchan, you're going to be Shah Rukh Khan, you're going to be Madhuri Dixit, whatever. Choose your favorite, and that's what you want to be. And I, being a kid who, a late 90s baby, had grown up watching Chitrahar and Super Hit Muqabla, and I wanted to be in Chitrahar. And of course, I was like a couple of decades late in reaching there, because they're like, the song and dance is on the decline in Bollywood films by the time I got there. But it was really just that. And of course, I was very, I'm not formally trained as an actor. I'm formally trained as a classical dancer, as Bharatanatyam dancer. So it was very, it was very seductive to me how close the camera comes to the performer's body, because as a class in the classical forms, you have so much distance between yourself and the audience. There's the distance of the physical distance of the stage. There's the distance of the form, which is a classical form, which the audience is actually not familiar with. So the mudras and whatever. So you're speaking a language that is actually alien to your audience. There is a distance of the language of the literature, because that is like very classical Telugu, old ancient Telugu, or Tamil, which is not even spoken anymore. So you have to make that connection after like crossing all that barrier, and it's very stylized and whatever. And I was just so taken in by how intimate the camera is, that if you change how you breathe in a scene or while saying a dialogue, the camera will register that. And that is my performance. So I was just completely floored by that. And I went there partly wanting to become Shah Rukh Khan and partly seduced by this whole intimacy of the camera, and basically realized that, bro, the film medium has nothing to do with actors. We're there, we perform, but it's not our medium at all. It is the medium of the director, and increasingly, it is the medium of the technology. It is the camera's medium, and it is the editor's medium, and it is the director's medium. It is I, as a performer, do not even have control. And this is genuinely true. I don't have control on which of my takes. So which of my performance is like, you do the same line many times over until you get a good take. So it's take is like the number of times you do it. So you keep doing that same thing. So I don't have control on which of my takes, so which of my performance is going to make it to the edit. I just realized that you're seeking the wrong thing in the wrong medium. I mean, all those pure artists, actors, there for the art and the passion and all. Babe, the stage is your medium. That is the stage is the actor's medium. That is the place where you're going to get your most fulfilling experience. This is what I think. This is my experience.
And can you make that? Because there are many people like Shabana, Nasir. They do theatre as well.
Yeah. And they're magic on theatre. Like to see Nasir Saab and Shabana ma'am on stage, it's just a whole other.
So do you get that opportunity now? Is there enough theatre happening in Bombay?
No, there is a lot of theatre happening in Bombay, and there's some very talented people. Unfortunately, I'm not that talented, and I think that time management is definitely not a skill that I have. So I've never been able to do theatre because I was quite clear that I wanted to. I was not, as I said, shamelessly, I was not there for the art. I was there partly for the vanity, partly for the excitement of the camera, partly for some other international conspiracies.
But you're right. I mean, there's a magic to a film set. Like, what film was that? Where I think Wag the Dog, where Dustin Hoffman says, give me a music director, give me a musician, give me an actor. And there's magic. And there is magic.
It's amazing. It is literally the most amazing. I don't know how to describe to you that, like, more than watching films, just the feeling of being on a set and just being part and working with like 200 other people. Everyone has their own job. It's like there is a hierarchy, but there's also this like really nice sort of harmony about it. Everyone is important. I mean, let no one tell you whatever great actor they are, however on the globe the greatest actor they are, let no one tell you that actors make films. Because it's just, that is the most misleading thing ever. I mean, if the spot boys are not on set, we will not be able to shoot. Because if you don't have someone who is giving you water and chai at regular intervals, you cannot pull off 14-hour, 15-hour, 16-hour schedules and shoots. Nobody can do it. So it's a beautiful thing, and I don't even know how to describe how much I love being part of that world.
So out of the wonderful friendships that you made in Bollywood, Kangana and others, so tell us, how often do you talk and what do you talk about, when your father trained you around the table? So when you and Kangana meet for dinner, what do you discuss?
I have not had the good fortune of meeting Kangana for dinner. I think ever after
after the film
after the first film, after Tanu Weds Manu 1, and I only speak to Kangana on Twitter, which I think is a very healthy relationship, and it's working fine.
Great.
I think that Kangana and I have a great relationship on Twitter, and I mean, look, she's a She's a very, very competent actor.
Yeah, she's very gifted, no doubt.
I-
That's like Sachin is a very gifted cricketer, but
She-
that's where it ends.
She's a very competent actor, and I sort of couldn't disagree with her more on everything else in the world. So
So, tell me, who are the stars? Like, you said you went there to become Shah Rukh Khan. So, I would assume maybe Madhuri Dixit or I don't know who else is from my generation. Madhuri was the queen for too long. I don't think Pooja Bhatt, Dil Hai Ke Manta Nahi, yeah, she was big. So, who are the people who you grew up watching and said, I want to be like that person?
Shah Rukh Khan.
Shah Rukh-
I only want to be. I was there to be Shah Rukh Khan. I remember the moment when I took this foolish decision in my life that I would and decided to throw away my education and go to Bollywood instead. I was sitting in a mudrika, going from Miranda
People
to.
here may not know what a mudrika is. Mudrika is the.
No,
which
of
is-
course
okay,
you will
enough
know what a
to-
mudrika
okay.
is. What?
It was-
Come on, Gurgaon.
I'm just saying, dude.
Aisa bhi
We
kya?
are sitting at the Corbett Gurgaon in 2021. You know, a lot of them may not know Mudrika.
I was it's the famous transport of the ring road and the outer ring road. So I was in the Mudrika going from Miranda to Pusa Institute to submit a hotel management form for a friend who was not in Delhi. And I was there near Azadpur Mandi or wherever. And I had been in the bus for 2.5 hours. And I looked around and Manmohan Singh was Prime Minister still. And I looked outside and I was like, there was all these, you know, all the like colonies of Delhi. And we were at a place where there was a slight like height, so you could see houses like that, you know, chota chota like slum kind of cluster. And I was looking at it and I was like, I just saw these dish antennas. And I was like, who is the one person that everyone living here would know? And they were like, and I was like, Manmohan Singh. I was like, no. And then I was like, Shah Rukh Khan. I was like, Shah Rukh Khan is a person that everybody would know. And at that minute, for some reason, I was like, I want to be Shah Rukh Khan. And literally, that is how I basically landed up 4 years later or 5 years later in Bombay. And I remember telling Shah Rukh sir this, that I wanted to be Shah Rukh Khan, and he was like, "Ban gayi." I was like, "No sir, मैं आई और मैंने देखा कि आप तो कहीं जा नहीं रहे, तो फिर मैं स्वरा भास्कर बन गई." तो
So, tell me a role that you have regretted doing, and tell me a role that you would have really wanted to do but couldn't.
I haven't regretted doing any role because I don't regret things much, as you can see. I'm a little bit shameless like that. I haven't regretted anything because I think that even the films that I thought would turn out differently and didn't turn out so great, but I thought that I got something out of it as an actor, because I am an actor who also learns on the job. So the more work I do, the more I learn, and I love that. I've regretted not auditioning for a couple of films that I feel like I should have, because I wasn't comfortable and like I didn't know any better or whatever. Some of those films became like cult films, but it was all right because the actresses who did them did a great job. I think
That we know that you would.
so. I mean, I think, and this is, and I always say this when I meet him also, that Anurag asked me to audition for Devdi for the part that Kalki did eventually, and I read the script and I didn't quite get the script. I'm not a fan of Devdas and this, you know, Naskatue Ashik and this, like, you know, this bichargi of men and this drunken whatever. So I was like a bit like, you know, thodi aisi meri feminism aa gayi beech mein, and I was like, like, what is this? But I didn't realize what a skillful director Anurag is, and how you should actually, I mean, he does magic between the page and what he's going to do. So I didn't realize that. So I told him that, you know, I don't think I'm going to audition for this. And then I haven't worked with him ever somehow. So I keep telling him that, dude, are you punishing me for like not willing to like, so that was one sort of small regret, but it's fine. I'm sure I'll chase him and find a way to work with him eventually. What is the role that I want to do? I mean, there are lots of them. I wanted to be Anarkali in Mughal-e-Azam because I love that film. And I got to be Anarkali of a totally different kind.
Oh, that was a great film.
It is a good film, yeah. It was a great film.
The guy who plays the Vice Chancellor, I'm so sorry, I'm really bad with names. Sanjay, he's done a film as a fading B-grade artist in Bollywood, which was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Kamyab. That's
amazing.
That's a fantastic kind of insight into the film industry as well. I mean, there's a bond, yet there is a... But other than, you know, of course, the Anarkali Mughal-e-Azam, something that, you know, contemporary, that that's a role that I think I would have done.
I mean, there's lots of them. I would have loved. I mean, I was not in the industry, but I think Black is Rani Mukherjee's, what she did in Black. It was just magic. What she did in Bunty Bubbly was just amazing. I think that. I don't want to seem like I don't support my colleagues. I think Richa did a great job in Gangs of Wasseypur. What she did was amazing. That would have been fun to do. But I always feel that, if an actor has done a good job in a film, even as a colleague and a competitor, so to speak, you watch it, and if the person has done a good job, you're like, nahi yaar, tune sahi. You were right for this. So and I think that we have a lot of really good performances from actresses in the last decade or so. But actually, Queen was a great role. And for Kangana, she did a brilliant job. But like, that is such a beautiful role to kind of get. And I'm sure there's a lot of actresses who must have seen that film and been like, oh, I wish we could have done this one. Yeah.
Do you see yourself writing, directing, producing? I mean, because a lot of artists kind of go down that way, because I guess there's a lot of leakage, because while you are right that the star doesn't necessarily make the product, but the star definitely sells the product, and a lot of commerce is riding on the star.
Yeah.
So many people who are actors kind of go into that, because why let that leakage go elsewhere? So any plans of, producing your own stuff, writing, directing, or not yet?
I mean, I have written 2 scripts and I have begun a production house, and I'm trying very hard to put my first film as a producer, writer and actor on the floors this year. So yeah, if Karni Sena and all will stop putting FIRs on all the platforms, and if studio execs don't have to be in hiding and are not getting arrested, then maybe I'll have a chance as a producer. But that's the plan. I don't want to direct, but I want to act in what I've written. I've written 2 scripts. One is a rom-com about 2 messed up best friends, very autobiographical in nature, and the other is a more intense sort of love story, which is also kind of a little bit taken from my family. Basically, a lot of people will not be talking to me when these films release in the family. And there's a third thing that I was trying to write, which has kind of got stalled, which is the biopic of a con woman, which was this great ambitious project that I had, but I don't know if I'm equal to it writing wise. So I'm trying to see if I can collaborate with someone.
And you had a busy year with the 3 Bhag Bini Bhag, Rasbari, and sorry? Flesh, correct. I saw the other 2. I didn't see Flesh though, but it's been an insane year for most of us, as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. So this was not shot like you're telling me this year. So this year you did stay busy dubbing. But other than that, what's it been?
No, it was actually strangely, this pandemic year has been very blessed and busy for me. And I don't want to sound like a horrible person taking glee while there's misery in the world, but I really had a good year. Because 2019 was like a blank year for me, because I didn't have a single release. And all I had was lots of controversies. And so, it's always a little... It kind of makes you a little anxious as an actor if you don't have releases coming out. And 2020, I was shooting till March. Luckily, we finished shooting Bhag Bini Bhag in the first week of March. We wrapped all our filming. And then, so when the lockdown happened, at least we had that. I was able to dub. And then I had all these releases of films that had been ready and were sort of lining up for release. And I had 3 releases in the pandemic in a year when everyone was watching OTT, sitting in their houses with nothing to do. So suddenly I was like, wow, this is Bhagwan deta hai, to chappad phad ke deta hai, whatever. So that was kind of really cool, and I feel very grateful. I was also able to shoot a film. So I shot in October for a small film in Bhopal, which will hopefully sort of come out this year. So yeah, it was actually all right.
What's your new release all about?
The new film is it's a long short film actually, but it's just very beautiful. It's called Sheer Khurma. It's a same-sex love story, but it's also really a story about parents and children. And it's a very sweet, simple story, but it's just so universal that I feel like it'll just connect beyond just what the issue is, which is the issue of acceptance and same-sex love. And I mean, I got to watch Shabana ji and Divya Datta, who are like legitimately my most favorite female actors in Bollywood. now today. I got to work with them and share a screen with them. So, I mean, I was like, yay. This is like Chandi.
So, what's it like moving between Delhi and Bombay? And this, I was always asked when I had moved to Bombay for a year, and I had unfortunately moved just the month where one of the most ghastly crimes had happened in Delhi, when Jessica Lal was shot. And it was a front page India Today, and I used to work with the India Today group at the time, so I went there. The office is in Nariman Point. And the one thing that all Bombay had said was, "So, what do you think of Bombay? Like, abhi hum dehat se aaye hain bhai, Bombay dekha nahi." So I was like, it's a city like, many others. And then there was this Delhi versus Bombay, and Newstrack had done actually a 10-minute, Newstrack used to be a very popular video cassette magazine, Delhi versus Bombay. It was one of the most amazing reports News Laundry did. So since you are a Delhi person, I want to ask you, Delhi or Bombay, and why?
If this question was being asked in Bombay, I would have had a very different answer. In Marathi. No. Bombay for work, because I think that Bombay is just it's just that the energy of Bombay for work and for your career, and just like, it's just it's a city of labor, and it's really a city of people who appreciate work and labor, and there is an ethic, a professional ethic that I have not seen anywhere else in the country that Bombay has. And I love working in Bombay. And having worked in Bombay, if you work anywhere else, you're just like, oh my God, like kya ho raha hai yahan pe? Like, like just can't, like it's a thing. Like after you've worked in Bombay, I feel like I can't, it's not the same thing working anywhere else. But for home and for heart and for everything else, Delhi. I mean, I just have not been able to sort of lose my Delhi roots at all. I take every opportunity to come back to Delhi. The pandemic turned out to be a great one. And now I've come back this morning from Bombay because I was shooting yesterday, and I'm going back like 3 days later, and then I'm coming back 5 days later. I mean, it's a 2-hour flight, so I'm just like, it's fine. I've turned the Delhi-Bombay flight into bus. Basically, Delhi Meerut chal raha hai mera.
And this shoot is for what? The one you're doing now?
This is a film that my next film. So this is prep and workshopping for what I'm going to start shooting in the first week of March, which is a lovely story about 4 housewives from small cities of Uttar Pradesh, like, like not Lucknow and Kanpur, but like Mahoba and Sultanpur and Unnao, and 4 girls who were in college together, who are best friends, who are stuck in slightly dreary life, and they decide to lie to their families and go off for a holiday to Goa.
It's a bit like the Housewives of Bollywood.
So it's a bit like that. It's like a garibon ka fantastic lives.
But okay, I'll open this to the audience now. If you have any questions, I just have a request that let it be a question and let it be short, please, so that I can get more in.
It's crazy you mentioned Mahoba. My grandfather is from Mahoba. Oh, really? Yeah. So I have a very fun question. We were discussing that right now Mahua Moitra and Smriti Irani are in Parliament. And 10 years from now, it's quite possible that Kangna and you might be in Parliament. Are you sure?
Yeah, that's a fun question.
Don't say that, man. Don't say that.
That's a good likelihood. So I want your thoughts on that. And the other part would be, if you could get a portfolio, which one would you like?
I don't know how to say this well, but one of us should not be in Parliament. Okay? And if only one of us is in Parliament, then and I feel like I know which one of us that might be. I don't know what kind of India that's going to be. I definitely want to be in public life. I definitely see a role for myself outside of Bollywood. I love working with young people and children. I think that we have a very limited understanding of politics, because every time we talk about politics, we only think of electoral politics. But politics is a lot more than that. Activism is a certain kind of politics. Education is a certain kind of politics. So I definitely want to get beyond Bollywood at some point. I don't know if anybody's going to vote for me. So there's a lot of problematic clips out there that will be played by the rival parties in their election rallies. I can see them right now. I know 3 of those clips right now as I speak. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. But never say never in life and in politics, I guess.
My question is based on the first part of the talk where you spoke about how you entered into activism and where your cultural and educational background. So there's a thin line of difference between really working for a social cause that allows you to decide what is right and wrong irrespective of which establishment is there in place, and the other part of the story is you have some political leanings based on where you come from. So what you spoke that you went to JNU and before that Miranda House. So do you think you have such political leanings that is leading to such an activism, or you really are interested in those causes and differentiate between right or wrong? Because what I follow you on Twitter very actively. So what I see is there is always an opposition to what is happening. So is it because of those leanings, or?
Right. So is it driven by ideology or by right and wrong? Of course, implicit in your question is that the two are separate. They are not, but I'll let Swara take that.
So that's a deep question. But first, let me just start by saying, and I wanted to sort of bring this in earlier, but I didn't quite get a chance. I don't actually think I'm an activist. Okay, let's put this out there. Okay, activists are people who spend a lot of time doing real work on the ground. They spend lives, following or working towards something, a cause or whatever you want to call it. I don't see myself as an activist. This activist tag is something that has been thopoed on me because I answer questions frankly. Okay, so at the max, if you ask me what are you, I'm somebody who gives a truthful answer. So I don't think I'm an activist. I don't even think I'm a celebrity, but I have learned to understand that yes, I am seen as a celebrity, and I've also learned to wear the heels and play the part and so on. If you honestly ask me, I would have been doing this in whatever job I was doing. If I had been a teacher, if I had been in the corporate business, my Twitter account would have roughly looked like this only. Maybe I would have been thrown out of a couple of organizations. I don't know what corporate India ke Twitter, social media rules are and so on. But I would have basically largely been this person. So I actually am not, you spoke about Saloni's gone somewhere. You spoke about celebrity activism. I think that it's something that we should really discuss because it's a complicated space, and I don't know if I'm very comfortable with it, because I don't believe that causes should be important because celebrities talk about them. Causes are important for themselves. If celebrities talk about them, great. I'm glad that the celebrities are learning. I'm glad that I'm learning as a celebrity. But I mean, even if a celebrity doesn't talk about a cause, it exists. And it has value, and it's there. And the issue largely with a lot of these causes are ethical issues. Why I definitely have a political leaning. All of us do. I don't believe that anybody in the world is neutral. More so now when the world has become so polarized and it is in a state of such conflict, such obvious conflict, and where the power dynamic is so skewed. Okay, so now let's just admit to ourselves that the power equation in India and you pick up any parameter, gender, caste, class, religion, language, whatever, the power equation over there is like super skewed. So there'll always in any situation be one person who has really a lot of power and another person who has a lot less power. And you can pick up any thing that has happened, whether it's Hathras, whether it's Kathua, whether it's the farmers' agitation, whether it's CA and RC, and if you start looking at the power equation, you understand that one person on that side, on the side of the issue, is in a lot of power, and there's another side which has no power. I have a political leaning, and I would like to believe that political leaning is towards, let's start with what is right, ethically, morally, what is empathetic, what is human, what is humanitarian. In my time, and what has some understanding of justice and what has some understanding and recognition of injustice. In my life, in whatever I have learned, I've come to understand that largely speaking, we find a lot of that in our Indian constitution. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good thing to hold on to in these times. So I like to see myself as someone who believes very strongly in the constitution. A lot of my views, people will listen to it and be like, oh, you're a leftist. I don't know that the left will be very comfortable with a lot of my life choices and a lot of my habits and so on, the traditional left. But yeah, sure, I'm sure I'm left on a lot of issues. I'm sure that there are issues on which perhaps a lot of my friends who are from JNU and who are more radical, like say to me that, oh, you're actually a nationalist, you're a centrist, you're a rightist. Now there's like you're upper class Savarna and you're, you know, like you're a Hindu. And I'm all of these things. I am all of these things because I am, like all of us are, a work in progress. I am, it's the worst cliche, shitty line to say that you're a work in progress. I'm sorry I said it. I heard it somewhere. But I'm learning. I am learning. And I try to, but on any issue, I try to recognize for me what is the right, ethically first, morally, social justice wise, whatever. And I try to try and understand the position of those who don't have power. Because just at a very basic level, you cannot equate those who have power with those who don't have power. And you can't hold them equally responsible. Because one person has the power to do something and change it, and the other person has everything at stake and no power. So that's roughly what it is.
Yeah, the lady there. Yeah, and after that, we'll come to the two gentlemen over here. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I was just wondering whether I should speak now. But Swara, I've really enjoyed today. You've been fantastic. And for me, you'd be the perfect date with your opinions. Honestly, this table is always free if you haven't got a date. But just one question. It's just leading on from, from the previous lady. Obviously, you're an actress, and obviously your trade relies on you having a following, right? That's what makes you lucrative. But so when you have that power, right? Sometimes I love the fact that you're opinionated. I mean, no disrespect whatsoever. But sometimes do you not feel you need to do actors or people with influence in that trade, do they not need to be careful as to what they say because they do have an influence, especially in our cultural context, which is very complicated and complex compared to like Europe, for example, because we have reactions that are slightly different from other countries. Okay, so do you not find sometimes that being an actor or an actress, you should pretty much be careful with your thoughts because they are, for everything, they are opinions, right? They are your opinions.
In a context, you have power, which
Right.
another person doesn't. Yeah.
So I try to be careful in two ways. One is that I try and I make mistakes, and it's just impossible to always manage to get 100% on that. But I try very hard to fact check what I'm going to be tweeting or retweeting, because I know that I have a certain reach, and I also now understand that if I take a certain position, people will be like, oh, so she took that position and that could influence other people. So I try very hard to fact check and ascertain actually the facts of what has happened, before I say something on it, or before I make a comment. I don't always, the kind of barrage of information you get on the internet on all sides, it's actually quite hard to manage every time, and you do make mistakes. And I have made mistakes, and every time I make a mistake and someone points it out, I always put out a clarification saying that I made a mistake, I've taken the other thing down, whatever. That's one way that I'm careful. The second way that I'm careful is toward my producers, because it's not my money that's riding on the films. People employ me, I am responsible to that contract. I am responsible to that commitment. And I've worked out a sort of way of... so you'll see when I'm shooting, and then 2-3 months before any release of a project, suddenly my Twitter timeline is all very like happy, dogs, puppy, kitten, flowers. Like I'm just like not talking about what's happening in India for 2-3 months. I'm just like very positive energy, positivity, meditation. So I try not to talk about anything so that I don't bring undue attention to my film. But now I've reached a place where there's just too much history. And I have a very dedicated sort of set of haters who work very hard and do a lot of research on all aspects of my life. So it kind of does get blurred. But I think that the trade-off is that, and I always tell this to my producers, that dude, anything you put me in, your PR is sorted. Your marketing is sorted. So, I can take care of that aspect. And touch wood, I've been very lucky that none of my films have suffered at the box office or in terms of views. I've been in... I think 6 out of 10 films of mine are blockbuster hits, actually. A couple of them are like Nilbate Sannata, which is like a film that, like, on paper, it's like how can this be a hit? But it made its money back at the box office. So I've also been very lucky like that, a fact that I keep reminding producers of. Other than that, I don't feel responsible. I don't think I should be careful towards, for example, things like, you know, and I say this, let me phrase this in a way that I will not go to jail. You know, there's a lot of talk about disrupting peace and about inciting violence and about inciting communal hatred, and that those are clauses actually used to put FIRs on people and so on. But I've come to find that in our context today, that's actually a tactic to silence people.
Or they'll find something you'll say.
Yeah,
That'll
because
happen anyway.
and
right?
there's a lot of people who have more at stake than I do, who should be silent. But I have a lot of privileges that they don't. And I feel like I should use that privilege to tell that story. So, and this, I mean, again, I'm saying this in a completely clinical way. So please, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so great and all. I'm not. I do it because I like doing it. I do it for myself. But the CNRC was an issue like that. Where I really feel that the CNRC was an issue that Hindus of this country should have raised. And I really feel very strongly about this. And I'm saying it with like calling out the religion and saying it. That of course, it was a project that would be inconvenient for everyone else. But for a lot of Muslims in India, it would be an existential threat. So I think that the responsibility was on me as an upper caste Hindu person with some platform, with some power of influence to raise that issue. So I chose not to be careful about that. And I feel like that is a choice that I really, I was deliberate in that choice. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question in a rambling sort of way.
Yeah.
Good evening. I want to take you back to your campaigning for Kanhaiya.
Yeah.
I feel terrible that he never made it to Parliament. I thought he was absolutely the right guy to take on the monster who's in Parliament, who leads the country. What do you think, what in your own analysis is the reason for his defeat in that constituency? Was it the choice of constituency? What happened? He has all the right makings of a good politician.
I think I don't know कि मेरी औकात है आपकी question answer करने की, just in terms of how much I understand about Indian politics and electoral politics in India. But I feel like my sense is that the 2019 election was a very different election from perhaps other elections from, say, 2004, 4 and 9 especially, even 14 to some degree, but it was an election where people were voting either for Modi or not for Modi. People were not voting for the local candidates. So when you were putting a vote for BJP, you're not voting for Giriraj Singh, you're voting for Modi. And I think that that's something a lot of us didn't realize at that moment. And I remember talking to a lot of people at that point, and I kept thinking that the anti-Modi wave is going to be the silent one, and that's the thing that people are not saying out loud, but actually there's so much anti-incumbency and people have all these issues and demonetization, blah, blah, whatever, and actually they'll vote, when the vote comes and all, they'll vote against Modi. But what I personally didn't realize is that the silent wave was actually for Modi. And I don't know if you remember in the run-up to 2019, there was...
The opinion polls were not giving the kind of... Except one which gave him that kind of majority.
Yeah, there was a lot of hope. Maybe there will be an alternative. Maybe there'll be a third front. Maybe there'll be some coalition. But I think what we didn't realize was that people were voting, when they were voting for BJP, they were voting for Modi. And I think that is the change in electoral democracy and politics in India, where there was the personality cult and all, but now this is another level of personality cult.
We're in the age of reality stars, America, and not just India, the world over. But I think Shahnawaz will be able to answer your question. You're from Begusarai, aren't you, Shahnawaz? From Patna. So he's been a journalist with the print. He can tell you a lot about why बेगूसराय lost one.
क्या हो गया था सर?
मुझे लगता है डेमोक्रेसी की सबसे अच्छी बात यही है कि आपको वही मिलता है जो आप डिजर्व करते हो. और लोग ही वोट डालते हैं और लोगों का परसेप्शन बदला जाता है बहुत तरीके से, और मीडिया वो सबसे बड़ा काम करती है. तो इट्स ऑल अबाउट परसेप्शन.
So were you in Bihar during the election? When were you covering it from Bihar, the election?
No, I was
in Delhi. Okay, we had a question here, right? There was one more.
So Miss Kangana Ranawat has, yesterday or day before declared that she's better than Meryl Streep. Or two, she's obviously from another planet, that also she has declared. And the third thing that she has declared that she's a queen and we all should bow down to her. So a quick, fast, funny observation, just to make the things right.
I think that the kind of confidence and self-love that Kangana has is like goals for all Indian women. I think that if there is one thing that Indian women lack, it is, giving themselves that kind of affirmation, giving themselves that kind of validation. And I think Kangana is a great example. So let us learn from that. I wish I had that kind of confidence and self-love. It's great.
And yes,
Kangana's head must be a good place to be.
No, and I'm sure you do have that kind of confidence since you do speak up. We hope this year is spectacular for you. And you do continue to speak up in whatever you do, and not because you're an activist, but because you're outspoken as you should be. And I never let an opportunity go. I'm a better marketer than her. I started something on newslaundry.com, which doesn't take ads. And we run on subscription. It is India's first subscription-driven news platform. So go to newslaundry.com and pay to keep news free. Because when the public pays, the public is served. When advertisers pay, advertisers are served, and if you want news left to the ads, suck it up and watch Arnab, or do something about it yourself. Right? So, Swara, thank you so much. Always a pleasure talking to you. You are so full of a zest and ideas which always impress me. And may you do fantastically well and become Shah Rukh Khan. And then you say, hey, Papa, Parat. And this is a little gift from News Laundry to you.
Oh my God, thank you.
So yeah.
And I'm a subscriber of
you
News
so
Laundry.
much.
Just want to say.
Thank you, Saloni.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Saloni.
everyone.